if you think about like the multiple offer scenario and absolute stupidity, numbers are absolutely crucial. And if you start overpaying, you can quickly erode your cash flow or whatever other return metrics you're looking for.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Welcome back to the show. We got an awesome guest this week. Nick Hill is joining us. He is a mortgage broker. He's also the co-host of the Canadian Real Estate Investor podcast with Daniel Foch. He has the mustache that we all wish we had. Nick, me and Steve tried to grow one last year, and it just got creepy real fast. But you have yours year round, and it looks pretty good. What's going on, man? Welcome to the show.
I grew it myself. I appreciate it, and unfortunately, one of my bigger accomplishments these days by the sound and the recognition I get from it. No, I'm honored to be on here. Obviously, I think we started our pods at kind of around the same time.
And you guys were like maybe a month ahead of us, yeah,
a month or two ahead of you guys because we just hit our 2-year mark. And I know you guys are either just about to or have, so congratulations.
Yeah, well, congrats to you guys. You guys have absolutely been crushing it since you started. I know we had connected a few times before you started that podcast with Dan, and you were kind of building things up. And man, it's very interesting how quick things happen. So like full credit to you guys. You guys have absolutely crushed it. I can see the podcast charts. Like we'll get it in the Apple top 100 every week, but we're like near the top of it. You guys are like, you're up with like the real heavy hitters in the top 10 most of the time. Like what's that experience been like? And I'm sure it wasn't your goal when you got into mortgages to become a podcast host, but here we are.
That's everyone's goal all the time, Tom.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
Right. Sorry.
You know? I need an excuse to, I'm waking up at 2:30 in the morning for my marathon runs and my ice plunges and everything. Uh-huh. So the next step was obviously CrossFit and podcasting. No, did not expect to get to where we are now. And it's just been a blessing and very humbling, but also, very exciting and rewarding as well. And, I listened to you guys and you guys recently were talking about your upcoming 2-year anniversary. And Tom, I think it was you who said that, hey, this is just a lesson that just keep going, right? Because anyone can, you just put the work in. And, simply put, we just put the work in. We actually had a podcast before the Canadian Real Estate Investor podcast called Brick and Mortar. It went for, I'd say probably almost a year. And you can go back and find some of our obscure videos on YouTube that didn't do well, obviously. And we were just about to shut that one down when we got the opportunity to kind of join into a new network with a leading business show here in Canada, the Canadian Investor. They kind of give us an opportunity. We took it and ran with it, completely rebuilt and kind of redid the thought process behind the podcast. And instead of what we used to do, which was interview style podcast, we really wanted to provide a almost like online real estate school. So, ours are really data driven. We don't really have many guests, over 200 episodes in because we do them twice a week. Wow. And each podcast takes, anywhere from like an easy one's like an hour and a half, 2 hours to put together. And then some of them are several hours to kind of write and research. And we don't script everything. We obviously want the room for banter and anecdotes and opinions and everything. But our goal was to really provide as much value to the average person out there that's not like the three of us that lives and breathes real estate, but is still very interested and more interested now than ever, because I think it's real estate and interest rates and everything that comes with that is kind of on the forefront of a lot of Canadian minds right now. So we wanted to provide some clarity for the masses on what can be a complicated subject and doesn't need to be, but, is. And that subject is real estate and more specifically for us, real estate investing.
And so you guys joined basically like a podcast network. I remember when we had Dan on early days of this show, he called the guys that you joined under the Podfathers. So is it basically like their Lil Wayne that signed Drake? You guys are Drake, and now you guys are signing the next people that come next, or how Usher got Bieber and then Bieber signs the next superstar? Is that basically how this works?
Yeah.
And when are we being signed is what I'm asking.
I mean, if you wanted to use that analogy, we're going to have to go like way down to some like Z-list celebrities that no one knows about. But Yeah, I mean, look, we definitely were given an opportunity, and we're forever grateful to those guys for taking a chance on us. Dan and I had been putting in the work beforehand, which I think, and you guys know what it takes to run a podcast, right? Everyone's just like, oh yeah, you just sit around and talk for an hour. Well, yeah, you do, but there's a lot of input that goes in, and a lot of front loading of the work and the branding and the editing and all that stuff that goes out. So we weren't really good at a lot of that.
Sure.
And these guys were, and, they came in and kind of showed us the ropes on how to run this as a real business, which we started to do from the get-go, and to have that different cadence and that different approach to it, where we are really just Dan and I dissecting information, presenting facts, presenting investment strategies. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're going to be signing anyone soon, but we were lucky enough to get the attention of, again, we're top 15, top 20 business podcasts usually, and top 10 investing. They're like top 5 investing, top 10 business at all times here in Canada. So very lucky to be brought on.
It's pretty amazing. We won't go all episode about podcasts. We'll get to real estate in a sec here, but it's always interesting to me. Like when I look through the business charts and I look, like, even for us, right? Like we're minnows in this world of craziness. Like the people that you are getting more audio downloads than are major corporations and celebrities. Like it's actually kind of wild when like your episodes are ranking above like Dave Ramsey or something. Or
keep going, Tom.
Yeah, I'll go all day. But I think about it for us too. Like when I see an episode where we're like ahead of Tim Ferriss that week for our episode in Canada, I'm like, what the heck is going on? Where it's like, I almost felt like the celebrities, like, stay away from podcasting. You're already rich and famous. Like, go do something else. Yeah. Like, leave this for the people that are trying to build something up from the ground. But I guess it is what it is. That's just what everyone's doing now.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of research into podcasting because truthfully, I love it. I think, and I assume that both of you guys love it as well. You guys are both good at it. You haven't quit. You've been going for almost 2 years.
I think that's really now. The main distinction is that we've just kept going.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? That is a distinction enough to make the difference, right? I mean, there's some crazy stat like, out of everyone that starts a podcast, if you've made it to 21 episodes, you're in the top 10%, or it might even be 1% or something like crazy like that. And it really just goes to show, the over ambitious mind that's like, I'm going to start this. Everyone else has one. I'm going to do it. And then they start, they don't get any views. They realize how hard it is. But just like with everything, right? We didn't get any views on our first one, and we did that for a year, and we would have never have gotten here without that. And, you can apply that to everything, how many houses did you guys sell in your first year of real estate? How many mortgages did I do? How many investment properties did I buy in my first, couple of years of real estate investing, right? So good things take time. And I think, the three of us here and my co-host Dan are all testaments to that.
And I think having the co-host like Steve, I wouldn't be doing this still if I started this on my own. There's no way. Having you here every week and us holding each other accountable, it's like a workout partner or a bathroom buddy.
Yeah. Steve's watching you max out on personal best every week.
All right. Enough about podcasting. Let's get into Canadian real estate and all the craziness going on. Nick, first and foremost, you are a mortgage broker. What's going on with applications? Are people qualifying? Are people getting big loans from their parents? Are they putting a lot of money down? Are they getting mortgage insurance? I could ask you like 400 questions, but where are things at right now? Like what's your day-to-day and your actual, I know the podcasting, but your job?
Yeah. So to be fair, my day-to-day is not that probably of the average full-time mortgage broker. Sure. Obviously have a few different things, but I still do have pretty good visibility and kind of optics into what we do in our business, which is both commercial and residential kind of across the country, as well as, my peers in the industry that are experiencing a lot of the same things that I am. And I'm sure that you are on the transaction and actually buying and selling of real estate side of things. It really is, I'm not one for kind of sweeping statements. So I'm going to say it's kind of still a mixed bag. Overall volume is definitely down, and overall horror stories or challenges and just stuff where you're like, I really wish we had talked like a year or 2 or 3 ago and you didn't buy those multiple pre-construction condos to assign because you saw a sick video on TikTok that told you could make $100,000. So it's definitely a mixed bag. We're still seeing the big down payments, still seeing, the bank of mom and dad play a role, still seeing people come in and be able to buy and purchase luxury stuff, luxury with big quotation marks around it, because luxury obviously is probably mostly based off of price point, but that changes drastically across the country. The main thing that I can tell you from the mortgage side of things is, and this is probably no secret because this is where most of the data lies, is that we're seeing most of the issues in the GTA, right? The GTA, and then Steve, over where you are in my home province and home city of Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, leading indicators of, can I swear on the show?
Yep. We're 10 minutes in. Say whatever you want. Leading
indicators of bullshit across the country, right? But with our business and the nature of it, we help a lot of clients across the country, both residential and commercial, whether that's acquisition or financing. And look, there's deals working in a lot of other markets. I'd say most markets not in Ontario. I'd say most markets in Canada, you can still get deals done. You can still buy single family homes. You can still buy good condos at good price per square foot. Costs. It really is, the problem really is Toronto and the GTA, unfortunately. And of course, the Lower Mainland, which is a lot smaller of a market, less infrastructure built up around it, obviously geographically constrained. But doing a deal in Winnipeg or Edmonton or Alberta right now is a hell of a lot different than doing a deal, or those conversations are a lot different than you would be having if you're doing something in the GTA HA per se. So very long-winded answer, but yeah, it's really a mixed bag. The main things are, I think we're seeing kind of a flight of capital and really just more interest and a lot more of that kind of investor interest and even just end user interest being drawn to other parts of the country. That's kind of like my major takeaways from the high level of the mortgage space. Probably the most popular stuff right now we're seeing is like the 3-year fixed. Everyone's kind of been reading the newspaper, obviously listened to the right podcasts, and knows about the renewal wall that we're facing in 25 and 26. And I think trying to do what we all tell them not to, which is time the market. But that's the advice that we've been given as well, is, let's do a 3-year fixed and reevaluate when we're in a very different rate and hopefully a different economic environment.
Steve, what would you take right now? If you had to renew your mortgage tomorrow, what would you do, Mr. 5-year fixed? Would you take the 5-year today? I wouldn't.
I haven't even been looking, to tell you the truth, where rates are right now, because we're so listing heavy at the moment. I'm just like maintaining the listings constantly. I don't even know like where our 5-year, 3-year.
Well, we have good thing we have a mortgage broker here. Can you get a 5-year fixed under 5% now? Ish. Uninsured. Uninsured.
High answer would be likely no. I mean, you'll have like teaser rates, sure. and I know that I think Ron Butler was just talking about a 4.9. So I know there is stuff out there. The thing is with those teaser rates or those low rates, right? The advertised rates, you got to take those with either a grain or in some cases a handful of salt, because the prerequisites for that specific rate will disqualify 90 to 99% of people. But guess what? Now you're into that branch or into that lending institution or into that mortgage broker, and they're able to have that conversation with you and try to
wait a minute. Else. Are you saying
is that a bait and switch?
Is there such thing as bait and switch in the mortgage world? I do not believe it. No. I do not believe it.
We leave that for the realtors. It's the sold above. It's the sold over asking after you've lowered the price 100,000, right?
Yeah. Steve, what have you noticed though the last few weeks? A few weeks ago on the podcast, you were basically crying on here saying you couldn't sell any of your listings. 20 months of inventory. And then Nick, he texted me yesterday. He's like, I sold a place on the first day. I'm like, what's wrong? What's going on? Make up your mind. Is it a good market? Is it a bad market? Or Steve, does the market change weekly and nobody knows what's going on?
Could we say that it's just a market and it changes? Man, I've never had such a variety of different things go on, right? I've got listings that haven't had a showing in 2 months. And the sellers have no urgency. and I have, like Tom was saying, we had a listing hit at, I think I sent you the text, like it was like 9:55 a.m. the listing hit the system. And that was, I mean, I actually had to get the guy to go show the property. He's like, here's your unconditional offer. I'm like, no, BC buyer rescission. Like, we don't do that anymore. Go show the property. So I think he showed it at like 1 o'clock, and we had the deal signed and done by about 4 o'clock, and unconditional offer. So, and it was not underpriced. It was just priced right.
Sure.
Right. So we're seeing that. And then, I mean, most of my evaluations are 10 months plus supply of competition right now. So most of my evaluations are like, hey guys, not only are we going to see price declines, we're probably going to see significant price declines. And I think that's where things are getting kind of hung up, right? Because we have to see many months supply before you actually see price declines. So we're at the early edge. And then the question is, September, October rolls around, does the inventory indeed stay high or not? Do buyers come back? I don't think we actually have that many more listings hitting the market than we did before. It's just they're not getting eaten up.
That's what I was going to say, is I think the main metric we should be tracking is when you're looking at months of supply in whatever market you're looking at, also look at contract date. I don't know what it's like. Like, Steve, what are your contracts? Are they 90 days? Or are they longer?
What
is a typical BC contract?
Most of my competition will take 90 days. I'm 6 months.
Okay. So, but typically they're 90 days. So it'd be interesting to see, of the active inventory, how much of that is already 60 plus days on the market or 30 plus days on the market, where it's going to get to a point soon that either expires or they have to relist and adjust pricing if they're going to sell, and how many people actually need to sell are going to make it happen versus like, you know, well, rates are just going to continuously slowly come down and I'll try this again in mid to late September or next year, right?
But Tom, maybe you can answer this best. So you're in the worst condo market of all time in Toronto right now.
Except prices haven't started dropping yet.
There's the doom and gloom I was waiting for.
Yeah. So, but what are you seeing the people efforting like lowball offers right now? And then Nick, is kind of same question. When you see the contracts coming through for the mortgage brokerage, like, are the list prices and actual accepted offers completely different?
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Realty Ninja. Hey, real estate agents, I bet you didn't get into the real estate industry to try to become a web developer. Realty Ninja will help you build a beautiful website for your business without becoming all techie, because me and Steve are certainly not techie. They'll set up your entire site for you, they'll migrate the content from your current site, and they'll take care of all the back end, switching the domains, all the things that you don't want to do, they'll take care of for you. Their team of in-house designers will make your new site match your current brand and help you stand out from your competitors. Best of all, Realty Ninja offers a free unlimited trial that lets you build out your website, and they do not charge you until you're ready to launch. That's right, they're so confident in their product and that you're gonna love the website that you build with them. They will not charge you until it's ready to launch. They don't even take your credit card details. Listeners of the Tom Storey Show will not only get an unlimited trial before you launch, but if you go to realtyninja.com/Tom, you will get 20% off your first year after you launch. A beautiful, functional, and professional website is absolutely a must in today's real estate landscape, and Realty Ninja delivers. So go to realtyninja.com/Tom for 20% off your first year. That's realtyninja.com/Tom. And now back to the podcast. I can just really quickly speak to this. For the properties that are selling for Toronto condos, they are getting 99% of what the asking price is. That's the average. But it's not because there wasn't negotiation room. It's because they're the 15% that actually sold, that actually priced right. So it's like the ones that are much higher, sure, lowballs are certainly coming in, but I don't even know if they're lowballs. They're just market value offers that the seller might think is a lowball because they're not in tune with where things have gone. I don't know, Nick, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I want to just take it back for a second. You guys were talking about, Steve, can we just call it a market? And, I was reading, I think it was the Wall Street Journal. It was, we always talk about bear markets and bull markets, but maybe we're in a kangaroo market right now because it's just literally up and down every freaking day. And I thought that was pretty funny. So I'll throw that out there.
I like that.
You know, the mortgage side of things, to be honest, we don't do a ton of condos. I don't see a ton of that. So I don't want to speak to something that I can't really provide my expertise on. There has been a lot of disparity from that side of things. We've had a lot of people come to us and be like, look, I planned on assigning this. I can't. What do I do now? And that's always a tough conversation. I can speak to a little bit from the real estate side of things. Funnily enough, as my girlfriend recently became an agent. She came over to the dark side. I was like, you know what, babe, there's really not enough agents in Toronto. I really think you should get in the game. So there she is. And she's great. She's working really hard, and obviously I can help her out, and she's helping one of her friends right now, and they've gone out and they've made a couple offers. You know, there's something listed at like, let's say 450. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is definitely under market. But you know, throw 5 at it. Okay. They make an offer for 500,000. And this has happened 3 times now over the past month. Okay. Yeah. 3 different situations. I'll describe one of them, but it's happened 3 times. So 450, they offer 500. The agent sends just a ridiculous email back, essentially with the premise of, this is way too low. Didn't you look at comps? We're expecting 650.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, do I write an email back being like, hey, buddy, worst condo market in the history of Toronto. Maybe you should start pricing things like you want them to be sold at to reflect. Because and then again, so she was like, well, we're not going to come up another 150. I'm sorry.
Yep.
And then just this one and the other 2 that this has happened with, literally almost the exact same story. Agent reaching out asking for an exorbitant, you know, not like, hey, come up 10, 15, 20. Hey, come up 100, come up 80, come up 150. And, you know, I just thought it was ridiculous that these tactics are still being used. I'm like,
it is.
What do you? You guys are the realtors. What do you think about it?
It is so terrible. It's happening here now too. And so, like, we just had one. Eric on my team was writing an offer. I won't use real numbers, but he was writing an offer yesterday. And let's say, for instance, it was listed at like 850, and it's been on for 60 days.
Yeah.
And so he's doing the evaluation. He's like, it's probably worth like 820.
Yeah.
And so he writes like 810 and, you know, expecting a bit of a counter, and the other agent's like 875 or don't even bring an offer. And it's like, but you've been on for 60 days. Like, what? Your marketing is terrible. Can you show me that you didn't just get your license in the pandemic, and that you've actually done something beforehand, and you know how real estate pricing usually works? But they don't, because the majority, at least in my market, probably not the majority, probably 40% of the realtors though have got licensed. You know,
probably similar
since the old virus came out. So it was like, this is what they think is regular, but maybe it is regular, because in Scotland you start offers starting at this price and then you only go up. Right. So there are markets that have gone through this before, where they're like, this is the base that we'll look at, and then where can we look at prices from there going upwards?
Here's why this is so confusing and it frustrates so many people. So first I'll say, like, we have 6 months of inventory for Toronto condos. Setting an offer date usually only works when you have under 2 months of inventory. Like, that's just a fact. Okay. If you've been on the market for 60 days at 450 and you expect 610, that's a terrible marketing strategy and it will not work, and you're going to piss people off. So like, those things can all be true. But then weirdly, what I've noticed, so we've been listing condos at real prices for the last long time because the market shifted. We haven't been going low a lot of the times. But then our buyer clients, guess what listings they're sending us, because they grab their attention that they want to see. They're sending us the ones at $499 that are worth $600 all day, like based on the last sale. Yeah. And then we just had last week our top group of realtors get together and we share like success stories and what's going on in the market. We do this Zoom call, and this one person was actually talking about a downtown condo, and they're like, you know, we were listed at the price we thought it was worth. Crickets. So then we went 20% under real value. Again, like, which isn't even something I'm suggesting you should do, But he's like, at least it got us like 20 showings and we got only one offer and we sold for less than our initial price, but we sold. Where before, where you're putting it out what we actually want, no one responds.
I'm seeing the exact
so it's this
same
tough thing
Tom.
where it's like you don't want to be the person pissing everybody off by underpricing, but it kind of works.
It
like
100%
like
works.
Nick,
So
in your scenario, she made offers, they didn't work, but they got an offer which they could have leveraged for another offer. So like, what are you supposed to do?
Don't go to Nick because I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to interrupt completely because I had the exact same thing happen. So I have a listing and there's a listing literally like backs onto the back fence on the next street over.
Okay.
And like we've got nothing happening. We're probably talking reduction. And then the next guy behind, the same time we hit our price, he hit our price. He reduced. But then he did something crazy, which is they dropped the price to an astronomically low price. And then they got 3 offers and they're almost back up at the asking price we're at. So I don't understand why buyers aren't just going, well, why don't I just offer on that one and try and negotiate it? They will only go into multiple offers right now. Like it's
weird.
I don't understand why the buyers want to get into multiple offers when they could just go offer on something.
Because people want what they can't have. If somebody else wants it, I want it too. Right? Like, is that not just human nature?
You know, it's so funny because if you think about like the multiple offer scenario, and we all remember the absolute stupidity. You guys saw it more on probably the end user. I saw it probably more on the investment side of things. And, you know, let's just say there's a multiple offer situation where there's 5 offers. Okay. That one person wins. I also have this kind of idea where did anyone really win, or did those 4 other people miss out on overpaying for this asset that this one person did, especially from an investment standpoint where numbers are absolutely crucial. And if you start overpaying by factors of, you know, tens of thousands of dollars, you can quickly erode your cash flow or whatever other return metrics you're looking for. So, you know, and to your question, Tom, I think this goes back to probably the biggest problem in Canadian real estate right now, which is the sentiment around everything, right? We've got overall negative sentiment on the economy and how the housing market is performing and interest rates and inflation. But we've also got a huge disparity between buyers and sellers, right? The expectations are probably like 12 months separated, which, you know, I'm not a mathematician, but that sounds like it's going to take maybe another 12 months to fix or to come back to reality for a lot of these people. So I don't know exactly. I don't think any of us are in the business of predicting. I don't know where exactly it goes from here, right? I don't know if, you know, spring we see sentiment maybe adjust a little bit and activity pick up as it always does. I think this one has been noticeably slower than many, you know, being not a non-pandemic summer. Everyone's just kind of like, give me a break from everything. You know, we've even pushed events and stuff like that because we're launching an event in Saskatoon with a partner, and they're like, don't even bother coming in the summer. Like literally, like Saskatoon shuts down like Europe does. So,
oh, really?
So I don't know where it's going to go, but I do think that sentiment really needs to adjust. And for a lot of people, unfortunately, that's going to be a hard-nosed reality unless, you know, the mentality is I'm just going to keep, you know, white knuckling like this is some kind of cryptocurrency to the point where interest rates have come down maybe a full point, and my deal, I'm not losing hundreds, I'm losing 800 or something like that. Right. So I don't know. There's a lot of work to be done on people's mindsets around the whole thing.
I saw a realtor post this. I don't know if it was them originally. I'm sure it's just a meme that's going around. It says sellers mindset, they think it's 2022. Buyers mindset, they think it's 2008. I was like, that's so good.
Yeah. It's true, man. I mean, you know, the last big real estate crash that everyone is aware of, you know, excluding like 2017, but it was the global financial crisis in 2008. And we heard all these stories, you know, and go watch The Big Short, and you hear all these people of, okay, you know, people are buying houses for pennies on the dollar. You know, that's where Sam Zell and even guys like Grant Cardone made massive amounts of money. So there is that mentality of, okay, we're in the shit now, time to start buying. but back then Canada was pretty much untouched. And I think we need to go through some of that pain to really realize some of that gain, right? It's that, pain, no gain. That applies to this whole thing right here.
I'm having trouble right now. And Steve, we talked about this on the phone the other day. It's like, if I look at the Toronto condo market right now, if you're going to own it for the next 5 years, you're buying a 2024 condo at a 2020 price. And I think in 5 years, it's going to look really good. Like, I honestly believe that. Not in 2 years, maybe not in 3 years, but in 5 years, I think it's going to look good. But as someone that puts out content on the internet, like, my gut feeling is saying, like, oh my God, like, I should buy one of these right now, because these are crazy low prices for what you're getting. And you're getting really good buildings and good locations that will come back at some point. Mm-hmm. But then if you go out and say that, it's like, oh, just a real estate agent saying you should buy now. And I'm having this hard back and forth. Like, our active clients, they know what's going on. I give them my opinion. But I really do feel, not as someone trying to sell you something, but like just looking at everything, do we not always look back at periods where no one was interested in something and go like, damn, I wish I had bought 5. And at some point, are we going to look back at July, August 2024 and be like, damn it?
That's very 2017-y right now, isn't it?
I don't know. Right?
It's not that far off. Like, it's for us, for example, 6 months supply would be fantastic. Like, I'm doing evaluations in downtown Surrey, Wally City Center, whatever you want to call it. And my evaluations are coming in at like 18 and a half months supply. So the only issue, like I said at the beginning, is that you need more months of that to make it actually make an impact. Because we are seeing, let's say, for instance, a nice condo is going to be somewhere between 430 and 480 for a nice one bed condo. That's about regular. They were 500 at the beginning of the year. They were 510 at the beginning of the year. There's still 15 on the market at $399 right now. But they're not going for the $399, right? Like, it once they actually drop to $399 and that looks like a steal of a price, I think there's going to be a bunch of people that go, okay, this makes sense now, because now the rent is actually looking like it might actually be workable, might be doable. I just think we're going to see a trend of this for a few months. I'm just shocked at right now. We had Doug Porter from BMO on, and he said all these people that are worried about 25, 26, he's like, it's 2024 that's the problem. He's turning out to be very right. And he's like, our charts actually say second half of 25 and 26 is going to be a zoo again. Like, that's what we're predicting. We think that's going to be the nuts. He's like, this is the year that people need to get through, where we see the most financial pressure coming. And isn't it starting to look like that now, though? Like, it is really starting to look like all of the pressure is going to go on this year. And it's funny that you say kangaroo market, because for the last 3 years, our price charts are doing just that. Our price charts are almost resembling seasonal inventory charts for the first time ever, right? So it's like, maybe there is a very good time to buy now. Maybe November and December is when buyers should be buying, but then they never do, because they're always worried that this market's going to keep going down and they won't jump back until January.
Which it could, by the way. Like, we don't know.
Oh, I think it is definitely going down right now. There's no question about that.
I think buyers aren't buying because they know much more than we do, and they'll tell you that they're all waiting for interest rates to come down. And the funny thing about interest rates, and Doug Porter's obviously much smarter man than I am, as are all of the economists that work at the banks. But they all say different things, and the stuff that they say changes on a monthly or quarterly basis based off of CPI and what's happening with the states and the election and a number of other things. I think the important thing to remember is that an interest rate hike takes 12 to 18 months really to work its way through the economy, right? You guys know this. So, all we have to do is the math. We've really only experienced some of the pain from the interest rates that have been placed in, right? So again, going back to that kind of white knuckling, Steve, right? It's like, yeah, this year is hard already. I can tell you that anecdotally. I'm sure you guys hear the horror stories. Go look on Reddit, go look on Twitter, some of the angrier places on the internet, and you'll see the people are pissed off. And, when is that going to come to an end? I think we're far away from that end. I think we're emerging into a new reality where people just need to adapt to the fact that, yeah, interest rates are going to go down, but they're probably going to stop at like 3.5, 3.25. Mm-hmm. And, that's very reasonable. It was actually unreasonable what we went through for the past 5 years. And not only that, but kind of for the past couple decades with like just the greatest bull run in Canadian real estate history, right? So I think with that bull run tied to the other fact of immigration, tied to the fact of interest rates, and really tied to the fact of the supply and demand crisis in some of these major markets, it's going to take, whether or not it's really painful this year and a little less painful next year and a little less painful, the pain is going to be spread out over probably the next several years, whether we like it or not. And that's not saying that everyone listening to the show, that the three of us will feel pain. We might have our best years, and some of your listeners might be like, I'm good. What are you talking about? But Canada's a big place. And I think, being the three of us are in Toronto and Vancouver, we got to remember about all the smaller kind of second tier, and I only say second tier cities based off population size, but that are across the country that are kind of dealing with the repercussions of the foolishness that was really, and speculation that really only happened in Vancouver and Toronto, and then just recently Calgary.
Nick, I'd love to know, your podcast with Dan is obviously investment focused in real estate. And there's been all this conversation really online, like you talked about on Reddit and Twitter, that landlords should be abolished and you shouldn't be able to raise rent unless you did a renovation to the unit. And so it's like you guys are also in this delicate space where you're numbers people, you give great advice, you're warning people about the good and the bad, but like you and Dan are investing in real estate, like you're doing it. Do you find that weird balance with your audience where like some people are like, this is great, thanks for the advice, and some people are like, well, you guys are giving great advice, but we see you as the problem? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You know what? I will say that not really from our audience per se. We made things pretty clear calling it the Canadian Real Estate Investor Podcast. It was like, hey, if you want to invest in real estate in Canada, check us out. If you think landlords are evil, then probably not the right place for you. It's definitely a fine line to walk. Like, it's not something that we even talk about a lot. We don't talk about our acquisitions, our portfolio. We don't talk about that a lot. I don't make social media content about it. I don't try to use it as like a flex kind of thing. I think that's super cringy. I think the way that we've approached it is look, there's data driven, there's economic trends, there's demographic trends, follow them, and whatever you're doing, add value, right? So for me, it's like, how is someone going to hate on someone? Everyone thinks the landlords are rich, evil, raising my rent kind of thing. And look, some of them are, and some of them are really shitty landlords too. That's why we have slumlords. And a lot of the properties that we purchased over the last several years we've purchased off of slumlords, and we've turned them over. For me, it's landlords and these small cap investors, and this new term that rehousing has come up with, who we're doing an event with, rehousing.ca. Check them out. Really fantastic resource. It's really going to be citizen developers and these small cap developers that help us get out of the housing crisis, right? I mean, okay, what are our other options, right? We've got the big boys, we've got the big developers across the country. Well, guess what? Many of their projects and tons of the small to mid cap developers projects have been shelved, some indefinitely. Some of these developers have gone out of business because they over-levered, and they, just like you said, Steve, you became an agent in the last 2 years. Well, what about becoming a developer in the last 2-3 years, right? It was the gold rush, and the well is dry. So we've seen a mass exodus of large scale builders from the community, and we know this because we do a lot of financing for $50 to $150 million kind of projects across the country. So we have eyes on that. Okay, so the developers aren't going to save us. They're not going to get us out of the housing crisis. What about our government, right? We can trust them to do a good job. No, we cannot. We haven't seen real government incentives since like the 70s with the MERB program, which is the multi-unit residential building program. And that was literally, 40 plus, almost 50 years ago in some cases.
Real estate agents across Ontario are using TRESA video to increase trust and transparency with their clients. And now for a limited time, you can get your own custom branded video totally for free. It's simple, and here's how it works. Simply refer your broker of record to tresavideo.ca, and when they purchase the broker version for your entire office, tell them to enter the promo code SUMMER at checkout. That's right. Refer tresavideo.ca to your broker of record and get your own custom branded individual or team video totally for free. Refer TRESA Video to your broker of record and they will love you for helping them provide value to their agents. Your coworkers will also love you because now they'll get use of TRESA Video for their business, and you will love receiving your very own custom branded TRESA Video totally for free. So tell the powers that be at your office to go to tresavideo.ca and enter the promo code SUMMER at checkout. This offer is valid once per brokerage purchase and for a limited time.
So what has our government done? There's all these horrible CMHC stats for it that the government's only built X number of properties and the housing starts are way down. So how are we going to do this? Well, it's not going to be one or the other, developers or government. It's going to have to be both of them. But what about the individual investor, the young guy in Winnipeg or the young girl in Saskatoon that's like, I've loved real estate. I want to buy this duplex and put a unit into it. Okay, well, you just doubled the capacity of that. So I think and especially in the markets that we're all talking to from right now, right, Steve? I know that Vancouver has been really great with zoning on major arterial roads. And Tom, we've seen, good, not great, let's say. There's progress. Okay, we can't ask for too much. And Tom, we've seen tons of stuff happen in the GTHA with laneway suites and fourplexes and increased density and all this stuff.
But you know what's interesting, though? That policy still points towards us, not the government. It's up to the homeowner to build the housing.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, right? So the government's kind of been like, who were supposed to be getting us out of this mess. They've kind of been like, well, we're going to make it a little tiny, because it's super hard right now. We're going to make it a little tiny bit easier for you guys to go and do this. And don't make too much money while doing it either. Take all the risk, don't make too much money, right? I mean, I think it's no secret at this point. We've talked about it a lot. Development charges in Canada and are insane, right? You look at the government makes 30%, developers make 10 to 12%. How are they supposed to develop? So for me, going back to that original question, should landlords feel demonized? Well, the shitty ones definitely should, and there's no time for them. But just like the shitty tenants should feel demonized and they should be kicked out for not paying rent or destroying units. And I've seen the good and the bad, the ugly on all that side of stuff. But the end of the matter is that it's going to be a joint effort between small cap investors, citizen developers, large scale and mid cap investor, and large scale and mid cap developers, as well as government incentives and programs to really get us out of this. And I think that if we can create a movement of people that say, hey, look, we don't use, my mom and dad don't use a lot of the space in their house, and they live in Little Italy or Little Portugal or Burnaby or, Kitsilano. Can we just take one of these houses and, turn it into 2 or 3 units? And every time, that's not going to get us out of the housing crisis. We need 3.5 or 4 million units or whatever the new estimate is. But if we can do that, that's going to incrementally change the numbers, right? That will move the needle. And if we can incentivize small cap developers to do it, I do really believe that is going to be a major way to slowly help. And again, going to hopefully be contributing to the GDP and to all the other good things that come with that kind of construction.
Sorry to cut you off. Here's what I'm excited because you just formulated that perfectly. So what we have to do is teach the millennials it's cool to move back in with your parents. We don't need to blame the boomers for enjoying their 4 bedrooms, but educate the millennials that they can go to their parents with this game plan. Hey, mom and dad, you can keep the house. We can change it. We can add another unit to it. You can live upstairs. We can rent out the bottom, or I can live at the bottom, or whatever it is. That doubles your housing inventory by that one conversation. And I know there's money involved and it's not easy, but you know, a lot of that space in those houses is sitting vacant.
100%, man. You know, we've done some research on this. Canada has the third largest square foot per capita outside of, so I mean, we've got more house than almost anywhere else in the world, right? Tom, you were just in Europe. I was in Europe a month or two ago. What were the apartments like you were staying in? They didn't have a living room and then another living room with a different name and then kind of another living room downstairs and maybe, you know, multiple bedrooms for people that don't live there. You know, we also looked at like the heat maps of usage in these larger homes. Guess what? People go to the bathroom, people go to the kitchen, people spend time in their bedroom, usually the primary bedroom, if it's boomers we're talking about. And then maybe, you know, the family room or the garage or whatever. There's usually one kind of outsider room that they spend in, but the house sits empty for the large part of the house sits empty for a large portion of time. We're also seeing that now have an effect on Canadian youth, right? I mean, Tom, if you and I think are around the same age, you know, if you had asked our parents or even, you know, the next generation back, how many of their friends had kids and were well established in their mid 30s, the answer would be a lot different than it is today.
Yeah.
By a factor of probably, you know, 10+% and more as you go back. When we're seeing declines in people having kids, we're seeing declines in home ownership and all that stuff. And that can all be solved as well if we can figure out how to chop these houses up a little bit. And so we're not just giving our youth here in Canada that want to move to whatever city's closest to them, that even if it's just for a couple of years, they'll get that experience and that lifestyle and whatever. There's more of an option for them than a 1-bedroom condo where they're paying $2,500 a month. And how the hell are you supposed to even, you know, girlfriend and boyfriend or couple in a condo? Okay, that can be tight. Throw a kid in there? No way. Now you're moving way outside of the city. And it just, I think it's really had a detrimental effect on lots of different things, even on human behavior that we've seen, right? So I really do think that if we can figure out a way to cut these houses up to get mom and dad who are going to become grandma and grandpa to either live in the backyard or the basement or the main floor, and then someone else lives there, and we have this multi-generational.
Put them in the shed, the pool house.
Put them in the backyard.
In the shed. That's where they deserve to be after having the huge house for 40 years. Come on. It's our turn. No, I'm just kidding. But you see this happen everywhere else in the world. You see the decline in home ownership, and we really, and that could be fixed too if we start to even condominiumize some of these smaller multifamilies as well. So I just think that, again, going back to the positive spin on things, I think if we can start to work through this stuff for the next decade, because it will take years and years to figure this out, because we got to rely on policy and trades and zoning and all this other stuff to figure itself out as well. But I think we're in the dark right now, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm just trying to get there as fast as I can.
Well, let me shit on your parade.
Perfect. I was waiting. Can I get an umbrella or?
Steve, okay, by the way, I want to see the heat map of Steve's house. I have a feeling I know what rooms are used the most.
It's hot in this gym every friggin' morning, man. 5 a.m. This gym lights up. Here's the issue. Like, I think what you're saying is great, and I do think we have too big of houses in Canada. We have. We don't like to be with each other as like a family unit. We don't like to be with each other, right? There's all these societal issues that you're talking about that I think may actually result from this spread out 7,000 square foot yard. Like, we don't live like Europe does, where they have a better culture. But if you think the government's going to be any part of that, here's what's going to happen. This is actually, I think, the next tax that's coming in, and it may come in before old Polyev gets his chance.
Is this the rain tax? Because we could have used that in Toronto the other day.
Rain tax is going to be in Toronto.
It caused $1 billion of damage. They could have just covered it with the rain tax.
You know, that flood never would have happened if the carbon tax just would have been higher.
Right.
No, but here's what the solution's really going to be to that. Because you're right. There is a little old Italian couple living in that, what was a 2,500 square foot plus basement home. And it's got 5 bedrooms. The kids are all moved out. They've got kids of their own. And now that house is empty. And what I think the government is going to do is they're going to say, you have 2 people registered as living in your home on your income tax, and you have 5 bedrooms. Next up, empty bedroom tax. It is coming your way. And the reason I know it's coming your way, and by no, I mean I don't know, is that
our sources are pretty good on this show.
They are thinking about bringing in a principal residence tax federally. And this is not capital gains. This is a tax yearly on the value of your home, which the government has just inflated, by the way. Isn't that an interesting way to get government or taxes? Tell you what, we're going to inflate all your asset prices, then we're going to tax the crap out of the perceived value of your asset, not the actual value of your asset when you sell at a capital gain. So they're thinking about basically bringing in a principal residence property tax, which could be as much in Vancouver, let's say between $4,000 and $40,000 per year. How's that little old lady on CPP, because that's her only thing she's got going on the west side of Vancouver, whose house is worth $8 million? How is she going to pay that $45,000 a year tax?
What's it going to force her to do? Sell.
Yeah, because we live in a communist state.
All right. Sorry, Nick, go for it.
It's true. It's true. They're actively trying to take away, like, your, let's say your property rights. BC is the worst, as we've just found out. BC is now the worst. Like, investors are going to be fleeing BC, and we're seeing it. I did an evaluation on condos. All the landlords want out because they just don't want to put up with this crap anymore. Not just the cost. They don't want to put up with not having their own rights over their own property. And you're going to see that. So I like what you're saying. I do think we should do it. I think the fourplex thing is so cool. How about this idea? How about if I'm going to build a fourplex? How about if I'm going to put my family in it, right? I got 2 girls. Let's say it's 20 years down the road. They're both married. How about we put in a triplex? My wife and I live in one unit. My girls each live in one unit with their families. No development fees on that. Just for myself. You're going to charge me $180,000 worth of development fees plus $300 a square foot to build? It's never going to happen. So we're going to end up in this problem. And plus, it doesn't benefit me to now put a rental unit in there because I can't get the renter out if I wanted to. Right? There needs to be some incentive, but that's not what's going to happen. The government's going to go, I know how to fix this. More taxes.
Steve, when you were describing it, I was like, is this, not, correct me if I'm wrong, is this a Ponzi scheme or is this insider trading? I'm not sure which one it falls in.
Maybe both. Maybe
a little bit of both. Yeah. Listen, man, I'm optimistic. But you're just as likely right as I am, right? I mean, I think if we've seen anything in the last several years in this country, very unfortunately, it's that, hey, let's ignore all of the amazing gifts that we have from natural resources. Mm-hmm. Canada could be the richest country in the world. Literally, yeah. We could be the richest country in the world. But instead of doing that, let's make those, landlords are evil. Well, so is getting oil from the ground. So is harvesting forestry. So is freshwater fishing, uranium mining. That's all evil too, right? They're all landlords. They all want to mine and destroy our country. Well, we can do it without destroying our country. And actually, if we build the infrastructure, we might be able to attract some of the best engineers, some of the best talent in the world to come up with ways to extract these resources. But we don't. What we've done the last couple of years is just implement more and more taxes. So anytime I see a new tax come out, at this point, I just shrug my shoulders and say, I'm not even surprised anymore. That's why.
How many more can we get?
Don't even bring that up.
Bring them on, baby. Let's go.
Can we get up to over 100% of tax? Because we're at effectively.
I hope so. Let's get there.
Effectively, after GST is paid, property taxes are paid, all of my income tax is paid. Effectively, I'm at 75%.
Yeah.
Right. I'm getting to spend a quarter of what I make.
Yeah. You better like it. Okay. You better be thankful for that.
All right, Nick, I have prepared a segment which is brand new for this show. Okay.
Uh-oh.
This has never been done on any talk show ever before. Okay. It's a this or that style segment. I'm going to give you 2 options with no context. And I just want you to say the first thing that the answer that you would choose. Okay.
Got it.
All right, ready?
Let's go.
Okay. Single family or multifamily?
Multifamily.
Fixed or variable rate?
Fix.
Condo or house?
House.
Long-term rental or short-term rental?
Long term.
High interest savings account or condo investment?
Interest savings account.
New construction or resale property?
Resale.
Urban investment or rural investment?
That's we'll put an asterisk, but we'll say urban.
Okay. Flipping or buy and hold?
Buy and hold.
Cash flow or appreciation?
We'll put another asterisk, but cash flow.
Bank or mortgage broker?
Come on, Tom. You're too kind. Mortgage broker, obviously.
And
Come on, people.
Steve,
We
I got
work for
one.
free.
Steve, I got one for you as well. JT or PP?
Oh, come on. Let's get out of here. Get out of here.
All right,
The
that
real
was fun.
For you BC listeners out there, the real question is NDP or conservatives. And by the way, we didn't have a conservative party 3 months ago.
Crazy.
The conservatives currently have 0 seats in the House.
Is that true? I didn't know that.
Yeah, because we had the Liberal Party, and the Liberal Party's like, we're not liberals anymore, by the way. We're now going to call ourselves BC United, which sounds like a soccer team. And
It really does, yeah.
and everybody hates their leader. Like, they hate him. So now it's like the Conservative Party's coming out of nowhere provincially, and they are not a party as of like literally 6 months ago. They didn't have a party.
Well, our current government is spending $9 million for our Council General Tom Clark to have a condo in New York on Billionaires Row, which is just hilarious. Just the one he had before.
The consulate general. Did you look up what the consulate general's job is?
It's basically like a host, right? They have parties for people.
It's a party host.
It's the party planning committee.
Is there like an
It's not even the
application
planning.
form?
He's got somebody does.
I think you got to be friends with the prime minister.
No, I believe it's actually.
I can't do that.
appointed.
I can't do. Not worth it.
Surprise, surprise. The guy
Yeah.
that was appointed by Justin Trudeau just got himself bought a $9 million luxury 3,500 square foot condo in the.
It's like $3,000 American per square foot.
It's the #1 most expensive address in the world, maybe outside of Dubai.
All right, let me try to play the other side here. Well,
Okay,
Steve,
go for it, Tom.
if we're representing Canada and we're having these dinner parties with other people from other nations, don't you want our accommodations
No.
to
If
be
we're
nice
representing-
and enjoyable?
If we're representing Canada, in the other 2 bedrooms, you need 4 sets of bunk beds with foreign students lining them up. Okay. And when you have a party come over and you're introducing some other, I don't know, let's say some guy from China, and you're trying to get business going between the 2 countries, you're like, come see what Canada's like. Look, we got underpaid foreign students sharing bedrooms. This is a representation. This is like Canada in New York. But
I don't know.
instead,
I honestly thought that was a
$9
fake
million.
headline. I thought it was fake. I was like, this is an Onion article. This can't be real.
Man, so did I, and then I'm always like cautious with that because obviously we all make content, and there's one time I didn't release it. There's one time I jumped the gun on a story, and I talked to Dan about it. He's like, I don't know if this is the full story, so we pulled it back, and it was actually, I'm sure you guys remember this. It was that one that was floating around of there was like a $25,000 to $50,000 tax for leaving Canada. And I posted it on my story being like, we're doing it again. And we ended up doing a full episode kind of debunking it on the podcast, which is fun.
Isn't
But
it
the amount of
14%?
outrage.
An exit tax. There is an exit tax, though.
Yeah, but it's a bit more complicated. This was just like literally to leave, and it was a rumor. Anyway, so we pulled that one back. But I thought this was, I was like, this is midst of a housing crisis. JT's got nothing but, shit hitting the fan right now. Time to go buy a luxury property, not only in like a tropical place, no, in New York City's Billionaires Row. And listen, my girlfriend loves New York. We go down a couple times a year. I'm obsessed with like architecture, and the combination of wealth, engineering, architecture, I think can just really do some cool things. Billionaires Row is an absolutely ridiculous place. absolutely ridiculous. You look at some, and I mean, a lot of your listeners probably follow like Ryan Serhant or Eric Corner or whatever, and those guys tour these properties. Like, it's stupid. So, but Tom, to play devil's advocate, I thought that too. I'm like, you know what, is that going to make Canada kind of look badass? Oh, these guys got well, no, because probably $9 million on Billionaires Row is probably one of the worst condos in there.
Yeah.
So why would we spend $9 million and go buy something like badass at like the top of a shittier building instead of like, let's get the worst?
100%.
It's just so Canada. I'm like, you guys would buy the most expensive unit in the worst, like, sorry.
They actually said the unit number.
Did they?
So it was on like the 11th floor.
So you're just looking directly into another building at that point.
Yeah. Look at our
like
view.
The cool factor's gone.
I want to see who the cooperating broker was who did the representation for the Canadian government. I'd love to know, and I'd love to get them on this show.
There's an off-market deal, Tom. Off-market deal.
Was it actually? Probably,
no,
right?
I have no idea. I mean, hey, we could make anything up at this point.
Well,
with the story,
they don't have MLS in New York City, right?
Not the traditional nice way that we think of MLS.
Yeah,
they have
something, their ways of doing business. They do not have an MLS. So because I saw Ryan Serhant doing an interview with the whole U.S. Commission thing that's going on, and he was like, "Well, this doesn't affect Manhattan at all." They're like, "We don't use MLS."
Interesting.
We've never used MLS, so I don't know. That's
all right.
I was just so disappointed. I was like, "Are you really going to do this? You have people that can't afford."
Tough headline.
Their rent, and you're gonna pump $9 million so a former news anchor can host Justin Trudeau and his cronies in the most expensive ad. Like you couldn't write this. You couldn't write this. If you wrote that the day before and said this is what's going to happen, nobody would believe you.
Do you need insurance? The answer to that question is obviously yes, of course you do. Whether you are a tenant, landlord, or homeowner, you need to insure your property and belongings. And when I insure my investment property, personally, I choose Square One. Square One is affordable online insurance for everyone. If you apply for your Square One insurance policy using the link in the description of the show notes, listeners of the Tom Storey Show can receive $20 off right now, simply by going to squareone.ca/the Tom Storey Show. Square One is no joke. I personally use Square One for my landlord policy on my investment condo. I picked Square One because they were easier to work with than other insurance companies. And when I had an issue with my previous policy coverage in relation to my Strata's coverage, Square One was the insurance company that came up with a solution for my insurance problem at an affordable rate. Online quotes take less than 5 minutes with Square One. Get your home insurance quote today at squareone.ca/the Tom Storey Show and save $20.
All I'll say, and I'm not saying that this was a good thing. I think this is absolutely ridiculous, but I continuously think that at least we can live in a country where we can say we don't agree with this on a podcast that goes out that thousands of people watch and listen. That I'll always be grateful for, but the current government is doing some things that don't really make a lot of sense to me. Nick, okay, there's lots going on out there. You are investment focused. Maybe just give me like what are people looking for right now for investments in this environment with these interest rates? Is there markets they're looking at? Is there specific property types they're looking at? Like, what advice are you giving people, and what are maybe you doing on your own right now?
Yeah, appreciate that question. I think I'll try to keep this simple because obviously there's every person, every situation, every investment thesis, which is something we really drill into our people. Everyone's different, so it's hard to kind of give those blanket statements. I'll attempt at doing it with saying kind of these are the two main things that we're doing and that we're seeing some of our students and some of our colleagues and peers do. And not to say that there's a fork in the road and you can only go one of two ways in real estate investing. There's a ton of ways to make money here. But the two main things, the two main trends that we're watching emerge are, if you do plan on investing in one of these more expensive markets, and that's not just Toronto or Vancouver, that's the GTA. And Steve, are we allowed to call it the GVA or is it just the lower mainland?
GVRD.
GVRD.
Greater Vancouver
It's
Regional
where the
District.
light touches, and then the elephant graveyard, that's where Steve lives.
No, I'm included. But I can tell if someone's from Toronto if they say the GVA because there's no such thing.
Listen, I was born and raised in North Vancouver, so I play both sides, okay? so if you're in one of those more expensive markets, and that doesn't just mean those two one that everyone knows about, that could be Hamilton, Kingston, Scarborough, Burnaby, Surrey, you name it. What we're seeing a lot of people have success do is by increasing density, right? So some of the stuff we talked about, and that's buying something and putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more units into it. You're not as necessarily tearing it down and doing a full infill development. In a lot of cases, you're buying a single family home and increasing the density. So if you're in a market and if you do want to play in one of the more expensive markets, that's what we're seeing. A lot of people that are, again, in Toronto, Vancouver, that do want to invest in real estate, the other piece of advice I'll give to them, and we've learned this from our American counterparts, is look, Canada's a big freaking country.
Yeah.
Go invest somewhere else. If you want to invest and you live in downtown, like I live in downtown Toronto, I rent. I live in downtown Vancouver, I rented there. And, I've been able to build up a portfolio with minimal partners of about 65, 70 doors. Okay. Not one of them is close to the city. I'm driving minimum 2.5 to 4 hours. The next stuff I'll be buying, I'll have to fly to. Okay. So the benefit about building your real estate investing business from the start, doing it long distance, is it forces you to actually treat it like a business.
Right.
You can't go and try to do everything yourself. It really forces you to create those systems and processes, those standard operating procedures, those best practices, and really find and build trust with the power team members in that location. Right? I mean, think about the big real estate investors in New York or LA, Miami, Chicago, San Francisco. They don't, for the most case, they don't live there, right? They're not living in New York and owning a bunch of property. I mean, you got certain people that do, but a lot of those larger landlords that live in the world-class cities, they own, a couple hundred units in Idaho or Mississippi or something like that. So the two main things we're seeing right now are people kind of interprovincially looking to set up their investment strategies, or trying to increase density. Those are kind of the big emerging trends right now. Of course, everything else still works if you can find a deal and make it better. Deals are a lot harder to find. They are becoming a bit more apparent on the market. And everything still works. I know guys that are still, flipping properties here in Ontario in certain markets, making between 20 and 100 grand doing it. I know people that have tried to do that and have been stuck and haven't been able to flip and are now holding and losing money. So, be careful. We really do believe that it's always a good time to buy a bad deal. And it's always a good time to buy a good deal, and it's always a bad time to buy a bad deal. Let me make sure I get that right. I'm very careful to give blanket advice for investors, because the unfortunate thing with real estate, at the same time, the fortunate thing is there's so many ways to do it. And what happens with a lot of people, especially when they're at the beginning of their investing journey, is they look at all those different things. They get really excited. They research each one about 20%, and a year goes by and they haven't done anything.
Yeah.
And that's why for anyone listening that is thinking about getting into investing, the most important thing you can do is figure out your investment thesis. And what I mean by that, and I'll leave you with this, is, saying I want to invest in real estate is one thing. That's great. I'm fired up for you. It's a big, beautiful world out there of risk and reward and challenges and opportunities. One of the best ways to safely build wealth. So if you're saying I want to invest in real estate, great. But that could literally be 1 in 1,000 different strategies. So what I want to be hearing is, I want to be buying student rental properties off of the bus route in London, Ontario, so I could service Western students, something big enough where I can put an extra bedroom in the basement. Or I want to buy sexy cottage properties, waterfront in Kelowna, and charge an exorbitant amount of money because I've made them extremely Instagrammable. Or I'm going to pick an emerging market like Saskatoon or something like that and go start buying, multifamily properties there. Hopefully I can catch both buy and hold appreciation and cash flow. So the more specific you can get to whatever strategy, because they all work, the more specific you can get for strategy, location, asset class, the faster it'll happen, the less stressful it'll be, and the more successful you'll be.
You said Saskatoon too many times that I'm worried. They're next. They're next. Their prices are about to rip. Everyone there. I'm so sorry for what's about to happen unless you own real estate. Okay, final. Let's put a bow on this. Great episode. This was awesome. Listen, everything's been negative for the last little while. Now, we know the truth lies always somewhere between the headlines and what's really going on, and the path to viewership on YouTube is just negative, right? Like, we all know how it works. But what is the next 10 years for Canada? Like, what's your outlook? Is the next 2 years going to be rocky and then there's light at the end of the tunnel again? Like, what happens?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you kind of started it off there. I think the next 2 years, there's still price discovery, there's still interest rate discovery. The problems that we're creating right now with all the projects being shelved and the lack of construction and everything, that's going to come back to haunt us in another 2, 3, 5 years, as all those condo starts were supposed to be started, or supposed to be completed. Sorry. I do think the road is rocky ahead. So make sure you've got a good team to help you navigate that if you're an end user looking to buy or if you're an investor looking to purchase. But I just can't help but think that, if things go a certain way, Canada could have a really amazing decade ahead of it, right? The phoenix rising from the ashes, a change in government, a change in Canadian sentiment. I mean, you hear a lot of Canadians talk about, 5 years ago, I loved living here. 10 years ago, this was the best country in the world. Don't want to be the doom and gloom, but that sentiment, anecdotally, for me at least, has changed. And I think you guys would share that commentary. But literally everything goes in cycles. And as we go through the dark and despair part of this cycle, we eventually get back to the, okay, it's not that bad. Okay, it's pretty good. Okay, it's really good again. Okay, it's too good. Okay, we fucked it. Now it's back. Now it's bad again, right? So how long is that going to take? And I just like to look at where I think we are in that kind of come up part of the cycle. And I think we're either at the very bottom or kind of coming out of the very bottom, which to me just means, if we can figure out how to work our way out of this over the next 10 years, figure out immigration, figure out our skilled trades, figure out the housing crisis. And it's going to be people like the three of us and the listeners to both of our shows that hopefully are a part of that. We touched on the natural resources aspect as well. Canada has the opportunity to literally be the wealthiest country in the world, right? We look at the Middle East and, the liquid gold and the printing of money because, hey, it comes out of the ground. And we look at it with envy or jealousy or desire. We can literally do the same thing. We've got 327 billion trees in Canada. Now, we can probably cut a couple million down and not destroy the world. We've got tons of fresh water. We've got tons of uranium, potash, not to mention all the farming and wind harvesting and that kind of stuff as well. So all of this stuff takes time, right? A lot of the stuff I'm describing will take a decade to even build the infrastructure to get there. But long term, Canada is a very young country. Yeah, we've gone through a bit of a rocky patch over the last couple of years with government and pandemic and all these other things. But, it's always darkest before the dawn. So let's hope that dawn is sometime in the next couple of years.
Is that a Batman quote? Is that from Batman?
I think that's a Nick Hill original.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
That's Batman. That's Batman. We have a joke on our podcast that I'll quote all these great people, and Dan will be like, "What's that from?" I'm like, "That's me, dude."
That's me.
and it never is, but yeah.
Well, here's what I think. I don't think we need to be perma bears or perma bulls. I think what we've learned today is we can be kangaroos, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And you can change your mindset in your thesis and however you look at the market. But don't become one of those people. This is just my own advice here. That your identity is based on how you feel about the real estate market. So many people have fallen into those categories. I think there's more to life, guys. It's okay.
Is there?
Well,
no, Tom, I thought as soon as you became a real estate agent, you had to become an immediate Z-list celebrity on social media, day in the life. That's your personality now, right?
I've actually hidden all my personal stuff. I'm just market stuff. But that was fun, man. Thank you so much for coming on. For anyone that hasn't, I'm sure a lot of people have listened to your podcast, but if you haven't, twice a week on Apple and Spotify. You guys are still hiding your faces though, right? No video yet?
We've got a very embarrassing YouTube presence.
Okay.
So if you really want to see what we look like, and us yawning and picking our noses throughout the episode, go tune into that. But yeah, we look at a lot of charts and stuff like that, so we tried to reference them in the videos we do. But yeah, Apple, Spotify, that's where we're probably best known for right now.
Awesome. Steve, any final words of wisdom? Wrap us up.
Well, I mean, I was thinking about what you guys were saying there at the end. I don't want to take too long, but I do think that, yeah, you're going to have a little bit of, I just wonder what happens to, maybe even me included, but all these folks that are just spending all of their time crapping on the really crappy governments that we have right now. When the governments roll over, which they always will, to somebody else, like, where is that effort going to be? I don't want to see what happened in the States where they just continued to pile on the old crappy guy before. Like in 3 years from now, are they still just going to be saying, what a piece of crap Trudeau is? Or are they going to like shift and focus towards like, okay, let's build something new? Because I do think we have to have a mindset of, hey, what can we do to build something new, to advance, to do better? And right now, like I said, myself included, it's really hard to do that when the overarching narrative is fairly negative. So I look forward to whenever that change does happen, just so we can kind of like mind dump the negativity and go, okay, what is the new focus on advancing and having some sort of hope? Because my thought is for the real estate that I own, it's going to be crazy. I think it's going to be, the value stored in land is absolutely, it's like potential energy, man. It's just waiting, and it's going to continue to rip. It's just, can my mindset not just like, can I bear the negativity and the like the outside forces enough to make it worth my time to do it? That's really the question, right? And so one thing I've done in my current condo is I'm doing my best. I don't read the minutes. I don't read what's going on in the building. If they want an assessment, I've ignored it all. And it's been the best, because the previous condos I've had, I've really paid attention to that. And that can happen at every single level. I like have to set it and forget it, right? Like I just deleted the stocks app off of my phone because I got sick of looking at my investments every day. Like I got to log in once a month and look at my investments, not look at them every day, right? Because I need to find that focus of like, okay, where's the next thing? And stop worrying about things I can't control. So I'm looking forward to that change. I just think it's going to be more than a year and a half away.
Well, we will see. Yeah. We will be here talking about it regardless on our show and Nick's show. Nick, we held you
until then.
Nick, we held you too long. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your input. I think that was awesome, and we always love a guest that already has a podcast because they come prepared with a mic and headphones and just total professional, man. So thank you.
No, it was a real pleasure, guys. Again, long-time listener and big fan of what you guys are doing. So really appreciate having me on, and yeah, a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, hopefully everybody watching has an amazing day, an amazing week, and keep that mindset as positive as you can as you go throughout life, because there's bigger things sometimes than just real estate. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye. All right, 1 sec.